So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my own journey of going from an architect to currently a bit more of an entrepreneur. And I'll also talk a little bit about two big trends that are going on right now, which is BIM 2.0 and AI. And I'll breeze through them a little bit. This is me. I'm the founder of Architect Network. And this is basically my full-time job now. I'm a full-time online business owner, influencer, YouTuber, whatever you want to call it. But I've spent the last 10 plus years working in practice as like an architect or a specialist at these three firms, so IDAS, Front, and Big. And so I thought I'd just talk you through this background and then how I've transitioned to where I am today. And at the end, I've got a little gift for you guys and also some of my top tips for you guys going out from graduating university. I've added in like a bit of a timeline so you can get a feel for how long I spent in each position. You know, I basically graduated in 2012 from my master's. So in the UK, that's basically after 5 years of university. And the first job I got was in IDAS. I actually moved to Hong Kong. So one of the first things I did was leave the UK after I graduated. I went abroad and worked in Hong Kong, where China was just booming. It was essentially like Saudi Arabia is today. And I worked on projects like this that were kind of, these kind of crazy designs. I became sort of like the grasshopper guy on the team. I was always designing these facades and things like that. And it's really where I started to pick up technology when I was working in practice as a designer. And these things would get built really quickly, basically from the renders. So you'd be halfway through the project and they're actually building the project. So it's very, very intense working environment. I then got to a point where I was like, I'm designing these facades, but I don't know how they're actually made. And I joined a company called Front, also in Hong Kong. And I eventually transitioned to their New York office. So I transitioned from Hong Kong to New York. And one of the main projects I worked on was the Morpheus Hotel designed by Zaha Hadid, where basically Front are hired to work out all the problems of all of the gray you can see here, right? Architects design these crazy buildings, but you also need someone to work out how to build it. And the only way you can build these buildings is through parametrics and computation. And so basically, we had to come up with the building system for all of this crazy geometry and script everything. So everything you can see here is done in Rhino and Grasshopper. There's no manual modeling. It's completely scripted because every single panel is unique. Every single case is completely different. So you build this really detailed model, and then you have to reverse that and give people drawings and annotations and things like that for them to actually transition into the built form. And so it's here I kind of really learned how to build things, how to fabricate things using computation and Rhino and Grasshopper. And eventually it gets built into this kind of crazy looking building. Then after this point, I wanted to go back into architecture practice and I joined Big. So again, I joined Big in the New York office and then eventually transitioned to the London office. I went back home after I left in 2012 and I returned in 2021, basically 2022. So I spent about 10 years abroad and I came back to London to kind of run the London office design technology team. So design technology at Big and many firms is become like an umbrella term for everything all the technology we use to design. And we think of it in different categories like BIM, computation, viz, simulation, and of course, AI. On Monday, I talked a little bit more specifically about all of those. In this, I'll kind of gloss over a little bit. This is the best way to describe my job at Big. Like, this is basically my job. That's me on the top, or the DT team. The projects are moving incredibly quickly. And as the design technology team, you have this bag of magic tricks of technology, BIM computation, that you're helping the projects directly, but you're also building tools for the entire office so that they can work on the projects. Behind every project that you see at BIG online, there is a BIM model. BIM is incredibly important at BIG. It's the reason why they've built so much in a very short period of time. So if you're a designer at BIG, you're designing, but you often follow the project into the later stages. So we don't have like a concept team and then a technical team. It's usually you follow it along. Computation is, of course, incredibly important at BIG and in many architecture firms, from not only designing, but analyzing your project to quantify that your design is actually performing, optimizing it, right? Sometimes, what if you take the Serpentine and you can only have 10 box lengths? And sometimes fabricate. It's not often we fabricated, but sometimes in architects we would fabricate stuff. We were also dealing with the immersive side, playing with game engines like Unreal, as well as the rise of real-time rendering and eventually D5 and things like that. Another area that I was really pushing was immersive design. So on the left, you got augmented reality, on the right, virtual reality. These were early experiments, which then evolved into real-world practice. So this is actually the headquarters in Copenhagen when it was being built, and we were using it to project what it's going to look like. And on the right was like actually us presenting in virtual reality during COVID. And of course, the other big thing that I was spearheading at BIG was the rise of AI and this whole explosion of image generation and video and text and all this kind of stuff. And as you can see, these images are super old. And so very quickly, we're experimenting with how do we integrate this into the actual design practice. And this is me when AI came along. Suddenly, AI could do some of the things that I was doing like very easily, which is a little bit scary, but also exciting. So my professional background was this, right? I've always worked sort of as an architect at these 3 different firms, but I always focused on a specialty, either as a designer, fabricating stuff, or as a technology specialist. Technology was always the core part of my career and my specialty, and also helped me get into some of these firms because I had a little technology superpower of some kind that helped me work as a specialist or get into different firms. And my background kind of led me to this 2 interests I have right now. So one is the idea of the 10x architects. So you guys as young architects that are good designers, but also are fluent in technology, can become significantly more productive than an architect that is not utilizing technology, right? And I think we already have seen this in the early days from drafting to CAD, and now this is exploding as we transition from CAD to the AI collaborative era. And the other area is this idea of digital master builder. So because of technology, we as architects can get back to making, okay? So you guys probably have all used the laser cutter or the 3D printer to make models. Well, you can scale that up, and you can 3D print entire buildings now. You can, instead of laser cutting, you can CNC plywood out of wood and actually build houses with it. And so you as architects can get back to being the full master builder from design to actual construction, which means, 1, you have more control of design, but 2, you can actually make more money because you're doing the whole thing, right? The second part of my career is what I call maybe the more entrepreneurial side, where I started to found my own businesses or work for startups. Pixel is an architecture practice I set up. Facet is a house building company, a startup I joined. And ATN is my online business where I teach people around technology. So again, there's always been this link between design, making, and technology or education. So Pixel, I started a few years ago now, in like 2018. Notice I started Pixel whilst working at these companies. Sometimes starting little businesses, if you can do it with their permissions, is important, can be a great way to start a little business because you actually have the security of having a job, but you have the freedom to experiment with doing competitions or taking on little projects on the side. So a lot of people say this idea that you just quit your job and start a company. Most of the time, people that do that, it doesn't work because you suddenly have no money, right? And you have to like actually quickly work out how to make the business work. So definitely creating something whilst you're working can be a really good strategy. Pixel was an architecture practice. It was just me and my friends working on competitions. We got close to winning some. We landed some real projects and some real clients, and we kept doing these projects over and over. And we had this real interest to work on projects that positively impacted the future. So instead of thinking of it like retail or commercial or office, we think about how can we improve live, work, eat, play, building, learning through architecture. And we worked on all these different competitions, from office buildings to taking projects to Burning Man to housing, train stations, whatever competition we could find that was interesting and we felt fit into that, we would work on. And this kind of led me to start honing in the world of housing. So I found there was loads of opportunity to create sustainable housing using technology that actually increases our way of life rather than decreasing it. So, I started to gravitate towards what's called MMC, modern methods of construction. So essentially new ways that we can build. And you can think about those in like this categories of subtractive, formed, and additive. So subtractive is when you take a material and you use a robot or a CNC machine or some piece of technology you can control, like a CNC machine and plywood. Okay. Formed is when you cut the material away and you use it to create forms of concrete. So precast concrete. Here in Guatemala, you have a lot of concrete. Or additive, which is where you 3D print entire structures. And so we started to work on projects like this. This was where we were designing a kind of prefabricated building system in the UK that could be repeatable, yet adapt to the different areas in the UK, because we have very different style of houses in the different areas in the UK. These houses are all built from timber. They're also made from hemp, which is like a weed plant. It doesn't get you high, but it absorbs CO2 very quickly, and you can actually use it. And so all the houses, we're trying to use local or bio-based materials. Another project we worked on was a modular precast system in Bulgaria, where they had quite an ugly building system, but through the use of parametrics, we could create a building configurator. So using a very small number of parts, we could create a house that could take many, many different forms, so that the families inside it can design the houses around them and not the other way around. And then finally, we also worked on competitions with Icon, who are a 3D printing company based in Texas, to build, this was a house for $99,000. And of course, the beauty with 3D printing is every single house can be unique. So it was, again, the idea of what if the users themselves can actually create their own house, a little bit like everyone's played Sims and create their own house in Sims. Maybe you guys are too young to play Sims, I'm not sure, but but everyone has played Sims and wants to design their own house. So this is the idea of what if you can actually configure your own house. And so then this interest in housing and using technology to build houses led me to join a sort of startup company called Facet, where we were trying to become a tech-enabled home builder. So Facet are quite a unique company. I joined them not so long ago, about a year and a half ago in 2024. I left Big and joined Facet. And essentially, they're a company that rethinks how we build homes. So we think of homes as a product, a bit like your phone here. Your iPhone or your phone that you have in your product pocket is a product. And every year, they release a new one, and it gets better and better and better, supposedly, with iPhones. So we also want to think of the house like a product, right? But not a product that you just copy and paste the same house over and over again, but the house is made up of the same parts over and over again. So the same foundations, the same roofing, windows, doors, all tied together in our what's called the Facet chassis, which is the timber superstructure that we build from a CNC machine out of these little Lego blocks. So we cut plywood, and then we build them into boxes, and then we build the houses out of these basically little Lego boxes. And it means every single house can be unique, but it's made using the same system. So you know how it's going to get built, you know how it's going to get costed, and you have freedom as a designer, but you have the efficiencies of a modular house. Of course, we also modeled the house down to the nuts and bolts in BIM. And that way we know exactly how many sheets of plywood it would take. We would know exactly how many bolts are in the building, which means we could actually cost the house to a very, very high accuracy. You guys may be unfamiliar with this, but when you go and design a building, you don't really know how much it's going to cost until you've basically finished it, right? Which is kind of crazy. But with Facet, we know exactly how much it's going to get built. This is basically the way that we built. So we had a modular building system. Even the foundations are modular. We use a little bit of concrete. All the little Lego blocks of plywood come into place. And we can make any shape of home. The waterproofing goes in. The windows that we use every single time goes in. And essentially, the cladding can be anything in the local area so we can fit in. This is what it actually looks on site. So they also pioneered on-site manufacturing. So we didn't have a factory. We put the factory in a container and bring the container on site. We send the codes to the machine, and then the machine starts cutting out the plywood. The plywood then get assembled into boxes by hand, and then the little Lego blocks. And then the Lego blocks get carried onto the building site and just assembled in person. And with this methodology, we could build the most sustainable homes in the UK. We could build faster than traditional construction. And often we would build cheaper than a traditional builder building to the same level of specification. And so we were also a true master builder. We were architects that were designing, manufacturing, and building. So our design process would start as a sketch. We'd design it. We'd model it in Revit, demolish the building. We'd do the foundations, cut out the pieces, and actually build it block by block to the end. You can actually go and check out the YouTube channel where you can go through the entire process of the building. And essentially, I joined to help them scale up this idea from single houses. So the company for many years had been building houses just for single, expensive eco-homes, and develop the technology, which we were then scaling up to deliver and tackle housing on a much larger scale. So go from single houses to multi-unit schemes. So in the UK, that's like little townhouses, apartment blocks, where we can really deliver housing to a much larger scale in the UK. So as you can see, it's the same building system, the same methodology, the same technology, but just applied on a much bigger scale. We also developed a new microfactory. So we have instead of one container, we developed a 3-container system. Same idea though, materials go in one side, they go through the more automated machine, out comes the components, which you can put into the Lego blocks, and then you can also join the Lego blocks into entire walls or floors and assemble the building really quickly. The key technology, or the key advantage we had, is we can fit our microfactories on the building site. So you don't have to pay for another factory. You can bring it with you and build directly on the construction site. This was the new machine. So in the middle is still the CNC machine, but we made all this automation around it. We had robots that would put the materials on, a 2D print system, so we can actually put instructions on the components. The CNC machine is still in the middle, and then a material loading and unloading, so that the machine can basically run without people overnight, and you can come in and start making the components. And so we were basically offering a new model for housing called home building as a service, where we would offer developers an entire end-to-end process from looking at the initial development, doing the design, building it, and even helping them sell the homes. And our goal was to build houses like this, which were beautiful, fit into the local context, but highly sustainable and highly performative, right? So this is really high quality, sustainable living in the UK. And then finally, Architect Network, which I started around 5 years ago, again, whilst I was working at BIG. This was something that started off small and grew from there. And we're a platform that really talks about architecture and technology. And our goal is to share knowledge around this topic. And we started it because even working at Big, we would see graduates come in and still need a little bit of training, whether it's BIM or Rhino or computation. And so I just started to make the same material I would use to train people inside Big. I would make it publicly accessible on YouTube or through our website. And we share knowledge in 4 key ways. So we have a podcast, our YouTube channel, online courses, and events. Our podcast started really small on an app called Clubhouse. You may remember that from COVID. It was pretty wild app. It's grown into a more YouTube-style podcast where we invite guests to talk about some kind of architecture and technology. I think you guys know Oliver and Stephen from last year. It's a very small world that we all know each other. We launched our YouTube channel, and this grew into one of our biggest features where we actually go and tour some of the world's most famous architecture firms and talk to the technology people there to show you guys as young architects what people are actually using and what technologies are actually being used, because the secret is everyone's using the same stuff. Like, there is no secret software that's everyone using. We're all using the same stuff. And so we go into the offices and talk about some of the cool technologies they're using, some of the new things that they're doing, just to show you guys. And these are completely free for you to access on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, we also do masterclasses. These are courses to teach people how to use technology in practice. And we do the basic courses from Grasshopper, Revit, Enscape, and Rhino inside. If you hang around to the end, there'll be a little gift for you guys for these. And we also do events where we gather industry-leading people in London, New York, Copenhagen we've been to. Hopefully one day we'll bring them here to Guatemala to come give really short talks on a particular topic, whether it's AI or computational design or modular house building. And we're evolving this into a conference next year, which again, keep an eye out for, because we may stream it to the world so you guys can access it online. But this idea of architect really came from my own background. I'd spent some time as an architect and designer. I've also been a specialist. So what you'll find is when you go out into the industry, if you have a little technology superpower, you can either be an architect and you'll kind of run a project. It's no coincidence that many of the top project leads at Big were very good at Grasshopper, for example. Or the other hand, you can be, if you have a very strong technology background, you can become a specialist where you can work on all these projects, you can work on in-house tools. But I think this term of architect is probably, you guys are the next generation where you'll be both a great designer, but also fluent in technology, which makes you a much more powerful architect when you equip yourselves with all the different tools that you need. And I also appreciate you guys are very maybe confused. There's all these different stupid softwares out there that you got to learn them all. You don't have to learn them all. But the key thing is that there's only a handful that we really use, Rhino, Grasshopper, Revit, all these kind of things. And so one of the things that we try and do at ATN is just help you equip yourselves with the right tools that you need. You don't need to become an expert in all of them as young students, right? You have to learn a couple key ones. And if you find a couple that really interest you, whether it's BIM or computation or visualization, you become really good at D5. It can be a real little superpower for when you go out there to work in practice. And I think that's one of the things I would really advise. There's 2 things that are really hot topics right now in the industry. BIM 2.0, the next era of BIM software that's emerging. And the other one is AI. I'm sure you've all used AI. You may be scared, you may be excited, but I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what I think is happening in the industry right now. So BIM 2.0, this is this new era of BIM. Why do we need a new era of BIM? So basically, many of the architects signed a letter to Autodesk complaining that basically Revit is not doing a very good job anymore. It's an old piece of software. It's 20 years old, Revit. And we as architects are demanding a newer platform, a better generation of BIM. And so from that, all these startups emerged. And now there's more than 9 companies. There's actually 10 or 15 now. But these are all these companies that are kind of reinventing BIM in this new era of a platform. So if you look at other industries like product design, they typically have one software where they design, they document, they even manufacture from and visualize all in one software. And this is sort of what these guys are trying to do. They're all little babies at the moment, but they might grow into something quite big. So I wouldn't recommend necessarily learning these right now, but it's worth following them and just seeing how they develop. One of these will become the next Revit. Some will die, some will join together. But yeah, so at the moment, all of them are either trying to be broad, they're either trying to be the next Revit, like one platform where you design in this space, or they're trying to be narrow, and they're trying to do a specific thing, like just do floor plan automations or floor plan layouts, okay? So at the broad end of the spectrum, you've got companies called Conic. This is also called the Open BIM company. So Conic is basically a platform where you can load the whole city, but even your model, all the way down to like the nuts and bolts. It's much more intuitive. It's a bit more like SketchUp in terms of modeling. You can model an entire building, and you'll see it will zoom in all the way to the little sprinkler, and you can zoom out to the entire city. Another that's more narrow, so they're doing a very specific job, is called Finch. So Finch is trying to use computation and AI to automate laying out plans. And it actually learns from your plans in different ways. And it can feed you initial designs, and then you give it back your own designs. And it starts to learn, and it can actually produce pretty good layouts for apartments and things like that pretty quickly. So it uses a system called graph mapping, where it's basically like an algorithm that measures the distance between these different rooms and works out the connections between them. And it's basically like a plugin where you can generate it, but you can also customize it and add manual touches to things. This is really important because this idea that the computer will just generate something for you is kind of false, right? We always want to be designing with the computer, not the computer designing for us, right? Next, we've got like a group here, Snaptrude, Arcol, and Giraffe, that are kind of, they want to get to here, but they're initially focusing on feasibility, so the very early stages. So you have a site, you quickly put a building on it, you put program on it. You can even, have this little chatbot AI thing that helps you go through the program and work out areas, and it helps you model a little bit. It's much more intuitive. It's also on the web, so you access this on the internet. You can go all the way from drawing to actually modeling a full project. It's also kind of very Miro inspired, so like everyone is working in one environment at the same time, and you can go from site, it can do all the program for you and model extremely quickly. Arcol is another one that's also quite similar. You can model a mass, you can give it different programs, and then you can very quickly go from the model to putting it onto sheets where you can actually go and present something to the client. So all of these are like trying to get that really early stage really quickly. But this is also another one where you go online, you find your site, you can quickly draw what you want to do. And it's basically using a bunch of kind of Grasshopper scripts in the background to help you get there a lot faster. And then the next ones are kind of like along this spectrum. Like all of them maybe are somewhere here, but they're all trying to get to become a broad platform. Spatio is a new one as well. It's probably the most beautiful one, where, again, you find a site, you can analyze it really quickly, you can generate an initial design, and so you can quickly work out like how much massing you can put on your building. It's a bit more beautiful in terms of the design as well. It generates something, but you can also manually edit it, and you can create your own scripts to create your own buildings. And so again, it's very early stage, maybe working with the developer to know exactly what you can fit on your site. Of course, Autodesk have their own products. This is called Forma, where again, they are also trying to create their own version of this, where you, again, go on the sites, you can generate your own massing model, you can do like environmental performance, you can give a massing and quickly analyze day-night analysis, zoning, wind analysis and all this kind of stuff. And this is free. So if you have an Autodesk license, you can test this out today. So I think as students, you should have this and you can try it out. Motif, this is one of the big new ones. They have a lot of funding from Silicon Valley. And essentially right now they're trying to build the Miro for the architecture space. So you guys can all be in one space, referencing your BIM model in, creating images, using AI to render it, collaborate together, make presentations. And this will eventually grow into a platform where you can actually model in the cloud, online, and work on things in a much smoother way. And then finally, you've also got one called Hyper, which is a bit more narrow, and they're specifically trying to do like floor plan layout or floor plan generation. So you can quickly go from modeling rooms to putting your whole building together really quickly. And so you'll see as it gets further on, it's very good at like automating space planning layouts. You can do like conference rooms and all this kind of stuff. So there's all these companies now trying to create the next generation of BIM. It's all quite interesting, it's all quite exciting, but it's all quite new. As students, I wouldn't say you have to learn any of these softwares, it's too early, but it's definitely worth knowing that they exist and following them. And this is called the BIM 2.0 era. And like a few thoughts on where this is going. First of all, BIM 2.0 is really hard. It's really expensive to do this. So these are little babies that will take time to grow into the next Revit. All of these are in the cloud, so it's like working in Google Sheets or Miro. Everyone is working on the same thing, hence why it's extremely collaborative. You're all working on the same project at the same time, can see your colleagues moving things. There is an obsession with becoming the next Figma or Miro. They all want to be the next Miro of the AEC space, again, where everyone is collaborating in the cloud. And it's all integrated with AI. So all of them are using AI in some way, even as a little sidekick or as like trying to generate the entire building. If you want to find out more, you can see on our YouTube channel, there's a whole video of BIM 2.0 if you want to find out more about each one specifically. And the other thing that's really hot right now is, of course, AI. Like, how many of you guys are using AI in some way? Image generation or ChatGPT? Put your hands. Yeah? Good. You should definitely be embracing the world of AI. We're in a really exciting time. There's been this rise of AI. I started this a while ago when I was at BIG, when it first came around, and it's like a way of looking all the way from the beginning of a project to documentation. It's a simplified design process of what can AI really significantly do or significantly help us in the design process. So at the beginning, you could give ChatGPT your brief, you could dissect the program, you could get it to come up with your idea and narrative really quickly. You could then use that to create a prompt for the image or generate the prompt directly and sell the idea of the project. You could turn that into a video to sell the story of a project and sell that to a client. And you can also generate 3D, but not in the most ideal way. It's kind of like a blobby form. Analyzing it, creating BIM models is not quite there. There's plugins that allow you to do these things, but it's not really quite there where we are right now. The way I see architects using AI when we go around to all these different firms and in the industry is split into two sides. So one is the process side, using LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude or Grok to streamline the more boring side of what we do, right? That could be as simple as using ChatGPT to reply to emails. It could be as simple as generating reports that you needed to do. And it's really about simplifying the boring stuff so we can spend more time actually designing and making the project better. The other side is, of course, the creative side, the side of image generation, video generation, and the more fun, playful stuff. In terms of LLMs, like ChatGPT, all firms are now building their own trained LLMs in their specific area. So like Foster's and Partners have their own one, Heatherwick, Zaha, Big. And it's simply just a way to create a repository of all the data inside that office. Like how many hotels have we designed? What's the standard GFA for an office building that we've designed? And it's really about having a place where you can access all the knowledge of the firm. Image generation, there's of course many people using different image generations, but I still see Midjourney as the place where people go to create the initial idea for architects. It's still the most creative, it's still the most high-end, at least for creating the essence of the idea. And it's become quite powerful as a way to quickly hone in on the design with a client. So you can very quickly feel out the feel for what the client is looking for by giving them these little like flavors of the direction we could go in. So it's really saving time on dead design options that you think won't necessarily work. Then firms are using a thing called LoRa's. So this is where you actually take a base model and start to train it in your own knowledge. So for example, Zaha trains their own model on Zaha images, and it creates like a very trained model. So the images are almost like it's a Zaha designer. These are called LoRa's, and they're typically used with programs like Comfy UI. This is essentially the grasshopper of the AI space, where you can give it an image, and each one of these nodes does a specific thing, controls the image, and it allows you to control the image with super high accuracy. And more recently, this has also evolved with Nano Banana. So Nano Banana is a product from Google. So if you go on Gemini, Google's Gemini, you can just directly use Nano Banana. And you can see architects. So each one of these pieces of work is referencing an architect. This is their name in the bottom left corner. Radu is actually from Heatherwick Studio. And you can see this is a really beautiful example of the power of AI, right? He's created a model, so he's got an actual reference for the space, so it's accurate. Sketching over it, so now sketching is becoming a really powerful skill, because then from a sketch, you can create the outline, and then you can use the outline to create a high-end render. And so I think this is where it's getting really exciting. Like bringing back hand drawing allows you to go from concept to render extremely quickly now, so you can spend more time thinking through the actual idea. Another architect called Tim Foos, they are actually using text to video to actually create fully animated videos to sell their ideas. And a lot of small architecture studios are actually now offering visualization services using AI. And through video, they're really able to sell the entire story and also sell a new service. So instead of going to a rendering company, you can now go to your architecture firm. And this explosion in AI imagery and video has also given rise to an explosion of social media. So I think the one place we have seen AI disrupt the industry is actually in social media, because now, as architects before, if you had to create projects to put on Instagram, for example, on Instagram, you're supposed to post every single day to grow. But that's very hard when you're designing, right? If you design a project, create a render, even if you're very fast at that, it would take you weeks or months. But now with AI, that takes you hours or days, right? So then suddenly architects could just feed Instagram with loads and loads of images, and there's this explosion in online architects and architecture profiles, which essentially means as architects, you could market your ideas much faster, right? So you could, to go from what I was doing at Pixel, where you're doing competitions and just working all the time, it took us like 10 years to create, not 10 years, like 2 to 3 years to create our first 10 projects. Now it could create 2 to 3 months, and you have 10 products, which you can then go out, market your idea, and find a real client. And that's exactly kind of what this actor here, Studio Tim Fu, has been able to do. From the space of 2 years, he left Zaha and started his own practice where he now has an office of about 10 people. We're also graduating into the world of 3D, where you can go from an image to actual 3D models. It's not the models that you can use as an architect, but it's enough for you to maybe get a feel for the proportions or model on top of the things that you have created with your images, which is quite cool. Again, from Studio Tim Fu, there's people like combining computational design with AI. But again, don't get this confused. This is not AI working the scripts. The scripts are just Grasshopper scripts, right? They're just Grasshopper scripts. And then all it is visualizing AI using AI. So all it means is that process from concepts to the actual end image is just getting much shorter, right? But you still have that combination of computational skill and AI skill. I think where it's getting really exciting now is when, again, Tim's been combining the world of Rhino and Grasshopper with ChatGPT or DeepSeek, and you can actually connect it to our tools and now just speak to it in plain English. I want a master plan with this much green space and this much towers, and it's starting to control the actual design tools themselves. And this is, for me, where I think it's getting really, really exciting. This is his studio there. You can look him up online. He's doing some really cool stuff. Of course, this has given a rise to like all these different plugins. There's thousands of AI plugins, and I think we are in this AI bubble that will burst soon. But somewhere in here are the next big tools, right? And many will die, but the next ones will be there. And we're already seeing now AI is becoming more and more integrated into our design tools. So Finch, the one I was talking about before, it can actually generate the plans and then automatically just import into Revit, and then you can go and manually edit it. So you can see through the use of AI, working with it, both human and artificial intelligence, you're able to just speed up that process from design to actually making things. And again, the new things that are happening right now is these AI tools are getting integrated with our design tools like Rhino. And the way that they are integrating is what's called an MCP, which is, think of it a little bit like Google Translate, okay? ChatGPT can speak a very general language, but it doesn't know the specific language of Rhino. And so MCP is sort of like a translation device where it can talk to Rhino in the language of Rhino, or in this case, Revit. So now you're able to actually just talk to your design tools in plain English, and it will actually create models and stuff like that. And I think this one's really exciting, where it's called Raven, where, again, you just talk to it in English, and it generates Grasshopper scripts for you, and it will even fix its own scripts. So this is a really interesting one. It's super early. These guys are like just 2 people building this, but this is a really exciting future of where they're actually going. And a final one, this is called RunChat, where it's these kind of new platforms that are a little bit like its own Grasshopper for AI. So it's a plugin to Rhino. You can open it up. You can bring an image from Rhino, and I'll just fast forward a little bit. You can grab like an image from Rhino and then turn it into a render. You can then turn it into a video. And then you can also go further, a little bit down the line, where you can actually reverse that process and go from an image, and you can turn that image into a 3D model, and then import it back into Rhino. So now you can go from image to 3D, and reverse that. So you can go from 3D to image to render to video, right? And this accesses all of those different models like Google or Midjourney and stuff like that. So I think this is going to be the future of how you integrate it with the design tools. So my thoughts, will AI disrupt the industry? Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, it hasn't disrupted the industry as much as we thought, right? I don't go into firms and they're suddenly designing in completely different ways. They're designing in the same way they did before. They're just using AI to speed up little parts of the design process. So they're just spending, instead of spending 1 week rendering the project, they're now spending an afternoon, which means they can explore more designs and less time working through how to actually render the project out. Will AI improve design? To be honest, I haven't seen like designs I've never seen before, right? AI is not creating designs. I think in the parametric era, we did see designs that we'd never seen before. But now I think we're just seeing more designs. And sadly, I think possibly the design is actually decreasing. The quality is decreasing because we're generating these things so fast. Is AI making us potentially dumber? Maybe. Because of the speed that we can create images, I do see the downside of AI where particularly young architects using it are thinking really fast and not really thinking through the deep problem that they're trying to solve. AI should be giving you more time to think, not for you to think faster and just produce stuff really quickly. So there's a book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. This is a really good example of the different ways you think. So thinking fast is also called your intuition. It's like really quick thinking. Thinking slow is when you break down the problem, and that's when you actually come across really unique ideas. So sometimes think slow when you're using AI. Will AI displace architects? I do think so, yes. It's not going to replace architects, but I do think it will displace architects. And what I mean by that is, I think we have been going through a different evolution of architects. So one in the drafted era, we're currently in the computer-aided era with Grasshopper and Rhino and all these plugins. I think we're evolving to Architect 3.0 where we're collaborating with AI, not that AI is replacing us, but we're collaborating it to be much more efficient. And I think also this will change architecture practice where, Architect 1.0, everyone is hand drawing the projects. There's also like 50 people, all men, on one project. Architect 2.0, this is the big New York office. Typically, each row is one project, so maybe 5 to 10 people per project. Much more diverse. Everyone's sitting in front of a computer. And I hope that we're moving into the Architect 3.0 era where much smaller teams can compete against these much bigger firms using AI to compete. And hopefully, they're in much more, better environments. All of this era is in major cities like London, Hong Kong, New York, which is really expensive to live in. And so for you guys, I've just been to Antigua. Maybe you open up an office in Antigua where you have a much better work-life balance. I keep saying lava, you should open up an office in Antigua and work remotely and be online because now you can connect to clients online. You don't necessarily need to be in these major cities. So maybe you guys here can set this trend because you don't need to be in major cities spending tons of money on rent and all this kind of stuff. So these are the two things that are going on in the industry. I just want to give you an overview of what's going on. As for me, I'm now working full-time on ATN. I'm a full-time influencer now, which is a bit weird at this age. I didn't expect to be a full-time YouTuber now, but this is how it goes. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm also an architect, so I've been a little bit confused on what to call myself when I introduce myself. I'm kind of thinking of an archipreneur. I think I kind of like this, which is also, this idea of reconnecting with building and making and being more than just a designer. And finally, I thought I just want to give you my advice, some of the things I've learned over this time. One, this is hard work. I don't want this presentation to look super smooth and polished. This is a lot of hard work to do all these things. It's not easy. I think get comfortable with failure. Things don't go to plan all the time. Things go wrong. Out of all of these 3 companies, Pixel is basically frozen. Unfortunately, Facet is dead because the housing space in the UK is really quiet. ATN is going well, but businesses don't always go to plan. Don't give up, though, if you have an idea or a dream. Don't give up on it. For example, when I applied to BIG, I got rejected 4 times, I think, at least, over my career, and then finally got in on the 5th time. Particularly for you guys as new graduates, I know it's really hard applying to all these different places. And you guys also have visas to deal with. I also had that problem when I was in the UK and applying to the US and all this kind of stuff. It is difficult. It's not impossible. Don't give up. Just because a firm said no this time, go continue to improve your skills, and maybe they'll come back another time. So don't give up just because you said no the first time. Networking is super key. Meeting people. I'm here today. You now have a connection to me. Message me on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm looking for a job, blah, blah, blah. Right? Don't message me too many times, but I try and reply to all messages. But for me, I went to a conference in 2014, and going to that conference completely changed my career. I met people that got me the job at Front. I also met the people that recommended me at BIG. I also worked with some of these people on projects with Pixel. And even today at ATN, a lot of these people now run firms, and I'm collaborating with them at ATN. So by going to one conference, all of the rest of my career basically spanned from this tree, because I was interested in computational design. There wasn't that many places to learn it. So going to Smart Geometry was somewhere I could meet people doing computational design, and it completely changed my career. And this is partly why I want to now create my own conference and create those moments for many other people in the industry. Embrace the online world. I know you are based here in Guatemala. I was lucky, I was based in the UK. London is basically the capital of architecture. But the online world is limitless, right? Embrace the online world. And this doesn't mean you have to start like a huge YouTube channel. It could just be an Instagram page where you kind of deconstruct a building, and it could just be about Rhino or D5 or your own designs. Embrace the online world so you can really connect. I'm here today because Pepe found my tutorial online, right? And I'm here today. I met Tudi basically through online. So I'm here today because I posted stuff on social media. That's it, right? So it's really powerful. Build a little superpower. Build a tiny little superpower. I'm not expecting you guys to be experts in BIM and computation, but when you go out into the industry, you can't magically grow 2 years of experience or 3 years of experience. That just happens over time. But you can have a little superpower. And it can be really useful if I'm hiring you and you know a little bit of Grasshopper or D5, or you can use Revit. That can be really valuable, right? And you can do that today. You're very good at learning technology. And also, take risks whilst you're young, okay? So when you graduate is actually the best time to try and start a little business or start to grow. I was talking with you guys, like, especially if you're living at home, you have no risk, right? You're not going to go homeless if your business fails. You're in the same position as you were when you did before, right? So when you're young is actually the best time to start businesses. You have no risk. When you're older, you have a mortgage or you have family and all this kind of stuff. It's not impossible, but you just have less risk. And finally, I just want to say a huge thank you. I've had an incredible experience here. Had an incredible weekend in Antigua with the guys sitting here. I want to say a huge thank you to you guys for bringing me out here. To Tuti, you owe Tuti a beer because she's the one who invited me, and also Pepe here. Tuti has also been taking me a tour around all these different places, and you guys here for taking me down to Antigua. It's been an incredible experience. And like I said, things are hard. Honestly, before I got to Guatemala, I was a little bit tired, a little bit burnt out. But after Guatemala, I feel super refreshed. I'm ready to kind of take on some new challenges. And so also as a goodbye, thank you for you guys coming. I want to give you guys access to our ATN Foundation Masterclasses. So these are courses in Rhino, Grasshopper, Revit, Enscape, all those kind of things. And you guys will get access to all of it. It's like hours of tutorials. And if you learn this stuff, it is really valuable in practice. You don't have to learn it all, but just pick one that you're actually interested in and try and learn it. And so I'm going to give you guys this today. all you got to do is scan the QR code. There's already some names in there, so I think if you guys were here on Monday, you may have already done it. Scan it. You just got to add your name and your email, and later on this week, I will add you to it. Maybe don't all rush in or pick a column because you might copy over your colleagues. And all I ask is you to help spread the word about ATN, check out our YouTube, check out our Instagram page, and just help us spread the ATN word around the world. Otherwise, thank you so much for having me.